My name is James. I'm a software engineer at Laravel. I build Laravel Forge and Envoy, like day to day. When I'm not doing that, I'm building Checkmango, which is a full stack A/B testing platform. Kind of the basis for this talk as well. Like, it's what made me want to talk about this particular thing. When I'm not doing that, I build Cache, the open source status page system, which I recently reacquired after selling in 2018. And egotistically, that is my face. Scan my face, you get all the links. I'm on Twitter, like JBrooks UK, everywhere. My family, honestly, without them, I would not be here today. They, in Australia, by the way, it's nothing dark or anything. They are here today at the back, thank you. If you hear any heckling, it is probably my 2- and 5-year-old or my wife, because she is a known heckler. Yeah, but thank you. We have had the best time in Australia. It has been amazing. And of course, my family also includes my dog, Baloo, because what's the point if there isn't any puppers? Okay, so before we go any further, I do need your help, Sydney. My wife said to me the other day, we've been in Australia for almost 2 weeks, and we have not heard anybody say, "Gday, mate." So we're going to count down 3, 2, 1. It will go on the screen. My wife is sat in the edge there. I want you all just to turn to her. And 300 people are going to say, "G'day, mate." And I think that makes up for the 2 weeks of lacking. Okay, we're going to start the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. That's it. I'm done. Okay, so we're going to be talking about documenting Laravel APIs. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Bit glitchy. Why Marmite is better than Vegemite? There are facts. There are facts to this. Firstly, it's full of it has a royal warrant. Yeah, right. I don't care that that's going to be reset because the queen has died and the king now needs to pick his thing. It still has a royal warrant, so I'm taking it. It contains vitamin B12. You did not think you were going to be having this talk today. Vegemite does contain vitamin Bs, but not specifically B12, which you need. It goes well in a sandwich. It goes even better on toast. And if you put cheese and Marmite in a toasty, oh, it's just heaven. And also, my daughter eats it, and anything she eats is a good start of the day. And that, Sydney, is why Marmite is better than Vegemite, and I'm now going to leave again. Nope. But seriously, documenting Laravel APIs, I'm very passionate about this, and I think we can all do a really good job. And hopefully by the end of the 26 minutes that I have left after wasting 4 minutes, you will agree with me. Okay, so before we go into API documentation, let's start at user documentation, because that one, easy enough, right? We've all had the internet for long enough. We know what an email address is. We know how to click buttons. We know what a button is. We know how to type into a text area. And often we can take the liberty that users will figure it out themselves because, well, it's self-explanatory, right? By show of hands, and keep your hands up as well, please, who's read the Twitter or Facebook documentation? Mm-hmm. So the hands that are up, how many of those is the actual twitter.com and facebook.com documentation for how to create, like post and update, upload pictures? Okay, like 3 people maybe? Says a lot. And how many of those have read the developer documentation, like by show of another hands? Yeah, just as nerdy as me. Okay. So we often neglect API documentation in our own projects, right? Which is really stupid when you think about it, because APIs are not discoverable by default. And without this documentation, without good documentation, we're left with a bunch of questions. Where is it hosted? What's the endpoint? Is it a subdomain? Is it a path? Is it versioned? How do I authenticate it? Is it bearer token, base 64, OAuth? what payload do I send? What like, is it JSON? Is it JSON, GraphQL, SOAP? What do errors look like? And more importantly, you're all going to laugh, I hope, fingers crossed. My wife is going to think I'm an absolute weirdo. Does a 200 status mean that it's also a failure? Come and see me at the end and I'll pay you all for laughing, thank you. Okay, so I mentioned Checkmango at the start. It's a full stack A/B testing platform that I'm working on, software as a service, and I want to make great API documentation for Checkmango. Full stack A/B testing platform, like it's written now as well, so it's official. It's very hard to read this screenshot, but basically you have an experiment. If you're not familiar with A/B testing, you take your current version of something, you take one or more versions of like differences, like marketing text or button colors, that kind of thing, and you compare them to see which one is better. So you have your experiment here, you have your two variants, like in this case, current and full screen for those at the back. And basically, it's all API driven, like you convert your events, you know which variant is enrolled into, and you get this like history. And essentially, the API is the product of Checkmango. It's the most important part. So, turns out great API docs are actually really hard to make. Like there's so much information that needs to be sent and communicated. How do you actually communicate that to a user? So I looked around and I was having to think about like, well, what documentation do I read that's actually really good? Stripe came up first. Everyone holds Stripe in high regard, especially for their API. And if we have a look at their documentation, we have all these additional pages on the side that break down errors and metadata, pagination, that kind of thing. We have all the different individual endpoints as part of their API, the different query parameters, they're optional, a bit of a description, any validation logic, parameter descriptions, yeah, response samples, example code snippets in different languages as well. And I was like, man, this is a lot of work. How do we solve this? And I was like, I know, I'm going to make another side project. But my wife, who gets a lot of mentions in this talk, so please do remember this. She was like, no, James, you've just put money into this project. You are not doing another side project. Stop it. Naughty. It turns out there is a better way, and I'm going to have a drink before I tell you. Any guesses? Become a farmer, yes. Yes. Any guesses?
Use the code.
You, sir, win some Marmite.
Oh.
Please don't deport me. That was a nightmare to get through immigrations, by the way. So it's the Open API Specification, formerly known as Swagger, which I do not have. So there's a project called Scribe, and their tagline is generate API documentation for humans from your Laravel codebase. What I didn't know when I gave this talk in India is that our very own Marcel built the original version of Scribe, Laravel Swagger something. Oh, of course, yeah, that makes sense. Scribe basically forked Marcel's work and continued it, and they've done a fantastic job, and I'm going to demonstrate it. It's just... it works by taking your code, where you add some annotations in .block or PHP annotations, you run scribe generate, and it extracts all of that information out from your code, along with some other fancy bits, and then it generates a static HTML of your documentation, including the Open API specification file. And I've had my time strolling around stage. I'm going to go stand here and show you how this works. So firstly, we will run composer require knuckles WTF / I don't know, / scribe, and then we have our dependency. So let's have a look here. Spoiler alert. There we go. So firstly, I have followed the Laravel Bootcamp, which I recommend everybody does. I don't care if you think you know Laravel inside out. Bootcamp is amazing, by Jess Archer, wherever she is. It's a fantastic resource, and at the end of it, you end up with Chirper, which is a much better version of Twitter. I am so funny. So we can do some stuff. I mean, it's just fantastic. It doesn't help that I've messed up in my time zones and everything's in the wrong order, but proves it. So what I've done is I think Jess just like dropped the ball here. She should have turned this into a full-fledged platform. The only thing it's missing is an API. So I have already saved ourselves some time and written the API, but we have no documentation for it because we're going to do everything that Twitter and Reddit have done and do the opposite. It's going to be a free platform. We just need the integrations. So there are two things that we're going to just check here before we go any further. The first thing is that I have this build script, which we're going to run a few times. All it does is rerun the migrations fresh and then run scribe generate. And you'll notice as well that we're using the docs environment. What does that do, James? Well, the environment, you have a .env.docs, and that will be passed to the command instead of just .env. So you can have like separated environments, which is really cool, and not a lot of people know that. So, more knowledge. So these are the two things. And then we have our API routes. And then, we have this user route and API resource, or route, if you want to communicate that. So this goes to Chirp controller, which is just a CRUD endpoint with some basically resources that are being returned. So far, we have no documentation, but we do have a fully working API. So let's run our build script. And we can see here that our migrations have run, and then scribe is all of this bit here. It extracts all the routes, pulls out all the code, does its job, and then writes it to our docs environment directory. And we end up with this, which is straight away more than we've already got. All of our endpoints are documented. I haven't changed much in the configuration for scribe here. I've changed the theme. I think that's it, actually. I literally haven't changed a lot. I just prefer this theme over the default one. So we can go through, we can list our endpoints out. We have this get API user, display a listing of the resource, and we can kind of see some information, but it's not great. It's still better than what we had, but it's not great. So the first thing is we have these endpoints that aren't grouped together. Like we have user, and then we have these things for chirps. So we'll sort that out, right? And we'll build on this together. So we'll go to the API. There's two ways in Scribe. You can use doc blocks or PHP annotations. Get the user. So we'll add a doc block here for that. Group user, and we'll say it's authenticated. And then in the chirp controller, we'll use the annotations. So here we're going to do authenticated and group. Chirps. That'll do. So on a controller level, adding these annotations will apply to all of the methods in there. And we will also just update this. List chirps. This bit, I'm afraid, is the most tedious part. Get chirp. Talk amongst yourselves. Edit chirp. And then finally, delete chirp. Oh. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, so we have now grouped our endpoints. We have chirps. Refresh again. Yeah, list chirps, create chirp, get chirp. Already far better than what we had. Like just by adding, well, I mean, most doc blocks would already explain what it is. You're not going to leave the list stuff, but And everything now says that it requires authentication. Fantastic. Okay, so list chirps. Here we have a response sample of 401 on authenticated. And that's because Scribe doesn't know what we're returning. So we can fix that. Let's go up to the top. And then list chirps. So we will add a annotation response from API resource, which is chirp resource. And then we're also returning the chirp model. Yep. And this is a collection because we are doing a collection of things here. And we are going to copy that to that one, yep, and that one. And we'll take the collection off. Back to the top. Okay, let's rerun this. There we go. We now have a collection, we now have an example 200 response that shows a collection of chirps. And then when we create a chirp, we also get that information back as well. Brilliant. So we know what response we're expecting back. Now for list chirps, we also have some filtering that we can do. We can give the user ID, filter by the user, and we can send a message and we'll do a like query to find any messages that are the same. We also paginate our responses, so our results, so we can also add that. So to do this, we add query param. Oh man, GitHub Copilot, guys. Like, how good's that? If I can press tab, there we go. Type integer or int, and we will say it's not required. Okay, user ID, message, search by message, which is a string, and we will add per page. I'm just gonna 10, 1 page to return, and we will do page. And now we have our query parameters. We have the descriptions, the types, what it does. Fantastic. Index methods looks really good to me. I feel like that's enough to work with. And we can also change our descriptions to explain further information. So fantastic. Okay, create a chirp. This one is done a lot, really. So we know that we have a message, a body parameter called message, and it already knows it must not be greater than 255 characters. However, the example is a bit like an Australian place, really. It's just... I am going to get myself deported. Okay, so we can improve that because it doesn't really lend itself to chirps, right? Just a random string. So let's fix that one. Firstly, Firstly, Scribe is using the form request instance that's being passed through here. Let's have a look at this. It has rules, message, it's required, it's a string, max 255 characters. That's how Scribe has extracted all that information out to know that information. So there are different ways of doing this, but the one that I am comfortable works is to return an array from body parameters method on the form request. And then we can do example, Laracon, AU. No, it's not coming soon. It rocks. I think that was right. There we go. Laracon AU rocks. And we can change the description by also adding a description key here and adding that. And that will append that will be prepended to the must not be greater than 255 characters. So the validation rule stays, but we can add additional information, which is just so good. Okay, to me, that feels good enough. Like, we only need to send a message to create a chirp. You have to be authenticated. We have example, all good. Get a chirp, yeah, sorted itself out. Edit a chirp, okay. Well, to edit, you need to send a message, because that's what you're editing. But it hasn't picked that up. And that is because when we do an update, we're just using the request class itself, and we're not doing any validation. So we've looked at form requests, but also, and I understand how this works technically, but it still feels like magic. You can do inline validation. So we'll do a message. Come on, GitHub Copilot. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool. And we'll add a message to update. Example, please don't deport James. This is recorded, so you know. There we go. So we've added our body parameter. The message to update must not be greater than 255 characters. It's just like, you don't even have to change your application. Just add a comment above something to explain what it is, and you've already got so much information. Okay. Finally, the last thing is this like delete endpoint. When we delete, we return a no content, so a 204, but Scribe doesn't really know what that means. So we can add a new annotation called response, and I need to import that. Status 204, description. Oh, fantastic. Don't tell Taylor that I don't write code. So now we have this response sample 204, chirp deleted successfully. It's just, how good is that? Like, you know what response is being given, you know why it's being given. I feel like all of us are smart enough people to figure out how to work with Chirper just from this itself. But we can take it one step further. So far, we've only returned the happy state, what happens when you create something, what happens when you update it. But of course, you can have validation errors. All of these endpoints require authentication, and yet we're not explaining what happens when you are not authorized. So we will add additional responses to all of our endpoints. So we're going to use a response from file, and we're going to pass in the file name. So it helps if I show you the files. So in the resources directory, I like to create an API responses subdirectory with different status codes, and then just apply these to my API. And of course, you can create individual files because you might have an API that returns a specific result for a certain endpoint or whatever. So we will use that, API responses. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten everything. 401.json, unauthenticated. I knew I was going to get that wrong. Description. And that's why I like annotations. Yeah, so now we have this, what? What? Amateur. 401. Okay, 204 chirp deleted successfully, 401 unauthenticated. This is how those like 200 failures happen. See this, Katie? I'm funny. Response sample 401, it's applied to all of them. Fantastic. And of course, we can also do this for our create. I'm going to regret doing it like this, I'm sure. But response from file. Resources, API responses, 422.json, status 422, description, validation error. Whoops. Okay, so when we go to create a chirp, response sample, 401, and we also have a 422 validation error. How good is that? Like, you can also get these files built as part of your CI systems as well. Like, just generate every kind of response you can, get them written, and then if you change the response, your API gets updated. Very cool. And Scribe also lets us download the open API specification, so we can go and like create a Postman collection. You can generate SDKs from just your open API files, which is what I've done for Checkmango. I just, like I say, I don't do any work, it's just tools. Okay, so what do we learn, students? Well, we can generate documentation directly from our code, and because of that, documentation now stays in sync with our code. We can automatically provide the downloadable specification files. We do not need to handcraft them. There is a time and place for doing so, but on an existing project, no. I would say not. It's almost too easy. We have no excuse. Don't be lazy. And there's more that we can do as well. We can write our own strategies, which is what Scribe calls like individual elements of this like process. I know that excuse me, Sam Carr, who works at Planner and builds Saloon, they wrote their own strategies for Scribe to do the same thing, but augment additional information. You can make use of OpenAPI's extensions format as well. So there's additional things that you can do with OpenAPI. It's not just like a set thing. You can enable Scribe's try it out feature. And when they make a request through your Scribe documentation, you can get a header that says, this is a try it out demo feature. Give them a fake response or something. Custom themes. If you don't like the one that Scribe ships with, you can choose a different one, or you could create your own, adjust the branding, have it yourself. It's great. And like loads more. The configuration file is huge. I would have a look at it. So how do we host our documentation? I am making good time. So you can use Scribe's generated docs, and if you forgot what it looks like, it's this. It's pretty damn good, right? You have all of the information you need. You have the downloadable specification file. It costs nothing to do this. It's like really good enough, plenty good enough for most cases. And because it's statically generated as well, you can upload it to Vercel or Netlify or whatever, and it's brilliant. Or what I do is use bump.sh, who I'm not affiliated with, but I do really like their platform. They have additional tooling, so they have a GitHub action that runs, and I can have my API spec files uploaded. And they do some really cool things with it. So I should have made this image bigger. But they have the additional content pages that Stripe has, individual endpoints, different request types, payloads, headers, sample responses, not just with the dropdown, but they're all listed. Example code snippets. You can download the specification file in YAML and JSON. And very cool is the changelog, because APIs change, but people often forget to kind of document what's changed, why it's changed. So Bump will actually look at the YAML file that gets uploaded and look at what's changed and make a lovely changelog. Yeah. This slide did say, but I thought that joke's run its course now. I'm just going to drop it. So I put my face on again instead. If you want to know more about Scribe, I wish I'd made it. It's fantastic, but I didn't. I just really think it's epic. But yes, scan my face, follow me for more humor. Sign up for Checkmango if you are interested in doing A/B testing as well. I would happily talk to you about that. Don't think that you haven't got enough traffic for a start. I'm going to leave my face up, but I am done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. There's actually a lot of questions from your talk, so I'm gonna hit a few of them, and then we're gonna go have a break. Does Scribe handle API versioning, and can the docs be made to require authentication?
Two different questions. The first one, versioning as in like a V1 endpoint, V2. Yes, I think so, but this is a talk on its own, but I would argue you don't need to version an API.
Okay, there you go. So I had another question. This is, how do you deal with versioning?
Yes, you can add the authenticated. You can actually turn it on in a configuration file, so it's just blanket on. Or you can do it per, like you might have an health endpoint that you don't want authenticated. Leave that off.
Excellent. Have you heard about, there's a JetBrains product called Writer Slide that is their full IDE for writing documentation. Matt asked about that one.
No, because it does it for me.
Excellent. And the last question before I let you all go for your break. How could you be so wrong about Vegemite? See? No answer.
I tried it and, it was fine, but it's not Marmite, guys. I do understand that there's a reason Vegemite existed, and I have nothing to do with that reason.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, James.
Thank you.